from zero to a $50 million empire. How do you build it? You certainly don't do it alone. And for me, it happened to be Rahul Visal who came along the way. And so today we're going to go down that memory lane and walk you through kind of the step-by-step process, the trials, the tribulations, and how we got here. Hi, guys. Welcome. I have a very special guest today, and it happens to be Rahul Visal. And today, if you look at our business, and you look at a business which is 30, 40 million, $50 million in business, few hundreds of properties owned, yet things were not always that way. And for most of us, and for most business owners, if you roll the clock back, it's very, very humble beginnings. So we thought through this particular podcast would kind of roll the clock back, pick up kind of where I started, and then how Rahul came in the picture, and what a good partnership can do for you. It doesn't have to be perfect, but yet it benefits both parties. So having said that, Rahul, welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. And it's very special for me also because this is something which I never dreamt of. Like, this is never going to happen in my dreams also. And when we started, it was just a small start. And from there, we came all the way here, which is amazing. And it's thanks to you for that.
Right. No, I think it goes both ways, right? It's like I certainly 100% would not be here had it not been for Rahul, to a certain extent, having kind of blind faith. And it wasn't that it was blind faith. It was the proof was kind of in the pudding as to what I was doing at the time. But yet, when it's very easy to say, oh my God, yes, today we can grow. But yet at the time, I was certainly not in a place where I had a lot of credibility to speak of. So I was a real estate agent since the age of 19 till about almost 32. I was selling real estate, and I was highly frustrated because even though I was making good money, every year I was scared, how was I going to repeat it? And even at 32 years old, I quite honestly did not have any savings to speak of. I was just basically running on a treadmill as hard as I could to do the right thing, which is to work hard, to try to make some decent money. And then end of the year, I'm stressed out. How am I going to do it again? And really, that is why I wanted to be a investor, because at the age of 15 or 16, my goal was to be retired by 21 and 22. At 22, it was like, well, I had to push it back to, I was 25 or 27. At 25 or 27, I had to push it back till I was 32. And here I was about 32 years old when I bought my first flip. And that was January 14th of 2008. So I could not have picked either the best or the worst part of the market to start in. So that's kind of where I started. And I met Rahul 2011, sometime to end of 2010 and 2011. And so Rahul, why don't you pick it up from there? What was your background at that time when I met you?
Yeah, so I come from a busy professional background. So brought up in India, did my all education. By education, I'm a mechanical engineer. I did my master's in business analysis. All that education was back in India. I came here for a reason because I got a job in Boeing. So it was like a very prestigious company to work with. So I was very excited to come to US. Was not here just because of the education or something. So I came for the job. And then the things go in a different way. Like, you don't expect to go to a different country and suddenly you lose a job. And that happened with me in Boeing. Like, after only 3 or 4 months of working there, I kind of lost my job.
It's a big layoff.
It's a big layoff. It was like a big company like McDonnell Douglas was merged into Boeing. So they laid off 20,000 people. And I was one of those guys.
So you're the most junior guy at the time. And then basically you're the first on the chopping block.
So that kind of started me going, okay, if you do everything right, you do education, you do well in your studies, you get a good job, but still at the end of the day, one day you can just lose your job. So that's where the thinking started to have something different or something on a side, a passive income which you can rely on after if something like that happens. So I came to Chicago from there, worked for Caterpillar. I got job because my education was okay, my experience was there, so found a job relatively easily. But still, every year I used to think, okay, the money is not there. Like, okay, I'm getting good salary, but when the kids come, when your family starts, there's just no money left. So how you can get more money and how you get out of this rat race of job on month to month salary? And that's how I was looking for some investment opportunity. I looked at many opportunities before I met you. And I think we met in 2010. That's when I've met you at actually in badminton,
Right.
playing badminton for 2 hours every week, and that's where you showed up.
Yeah, and we start talking about kind of investing. But I mean, this is important to understand that we have two different profiles, right? Even though both of us happen to be Indian by origin, right? In terms of parents, family, that sort of thing. But two completely different people, meaning that Rahul was the person, good grades, good school, finished college, gets a good job, right? Which is a big thing for a lot of immigrants, not just Indians, a lot of immigrants, and coming to America that, oh my God, I'm going to go work for Boeing, right? For a lot of immigrants, especially at that era, which is about 25, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
when you came to America, you were going, oh my God, you're working for IBM, you're working for Boeing. I mean, it couldn't really be any bigger company. And it didn't matter if you're a janitor there, that nobody asked, but oh my God, my son works for blah, 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 right? And that's all that really mattered. But in his case, engineering background gets a job, which is a dream job at the time, and then you get laid off. On my end, I was always the kid that was, even though I had a brain, it's funny, my sister the other day, just threw out my report cards, has potential, does not apply himself. Every single report card, basically that's what it said. So I wasn't necessarily the D student, but I was certainly not the A student, right? I was kind of in the middle where clearly teachers are like, too much energy. And so I always had big fantasies from the very beginning of, hey, I'm going to be rich. No clue how, but going to be very rich. And my parents happened to be, both of them were surgeons. So you have to go get good education, good school, and didn't quite fit my picture. So I come back to America at the age of 17, finish high school, drop out of college, and I always had the entrepreneurial bug, right? And so even in college, I was going to get into real estate, be Mr. Successful, and yet from the age of that 18, 19 years old till 32, I became my parents, which is I was running on a treadmill, right? I was, in a busy professional, just in a different thing. But one thing was for sure, I was not happy. I was miserable as it could be because I knew there was something else. I didn't know what, but I knew there was something else. And sometimes if that is you, right, that clearly means that there is a potential for you. And for a lot of people, be it entrepreneurs, be it Rahul came to entrepreneurship a little bit later, which was that something more is possible beyond engineering. But there was a critical factor for you that happened that really kind of sped that up. And was that losing the job at Boeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that if you, a lot of these seminars we go and they ask question, what is your why? That's my why. Like when you get laid off from a company where you are not at fault, like it's not your fault that you did not do your job. It's just because it's a company decision that 20,000 people has to leave tomorrow, and you're gone. So like you don't have your destiny in your hand.
Right.
That's,
so you could
that's the biggest why I have.
And that's where you could do everything by the book, right? Work hard, study hard, but yet somebody else controls your destiny, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So, and my biggest deal was that I was like, okay, working hard is not working. Not that I'm not making money, but I don't want to be in a rat race where I keep running on a treadmill all the time. And that's where I always thought that once you work hard, once you're quote unquote Mr. Entrepreneur, or doing your own thing, you're supposed to be rich. You're supposed to be able to buy what you want, be able to live a great lifestyle. And clearly, I was not there. And so I started doing flips 2008. 2008, I ended up doing about 10 flips. 2009, I did 30. 2010, I did 60. And this is kind of when I was like, this is not working. Even though if you looked at my income, it was close to about 1.1, 1.2 million, right? And that's what's supposed to be the income based on the sales. But yet, when you look at net, I had actually gone backwards, meaning I'm putting every single penny back into the business. So I had not paid my taxes. My credit score was okay. Wasn't bad necessarily, but was okay, as I'm Mr. Entrepreneur, right? I'm going to focus on my business, put every penny back into the business. And the reason why I relate this is a story of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? That they have this big grandiose ideas, but yet execution and in an orderly manner is not necessarily their strength. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. Just understand that's where you are. And I'm bringing that up because a lot of times you need a yin and a yang, meaning certain people who are good at certain things and other people who are good at other things, or maybe we call it you're missing your profile that you may have. You need to succeed in business. You need money from somewhere. Doesn't have to be yours. You need credit from somewhere. You need somebody who's willing to take on the headache, do the work. In real estate, somebody who's willing to find the deals. And the way it came about was, here I was doing all these deals. Everybody around me, oh man, you're successful. Even 2008, 9, 10, you're selling all these properties. I'm like, I feel more broke at that time. I felt more broke in 2010 than I did as a real estate agent. As a real estate agent, at least property didn't sell. I go to the seller and say, Mr. Seller, we need a price reduction. You have 5, 10, 15 flips sitting on the market in a market of 2009, 2010, and they're not selling. Guess who takes the price reduction? I did. So my stress factor actually was way more, even though what I had done was I had mislabeled flipping, which is a transactional business, into investing. And this is kind of what is going on in my background when I happened to meet Rahul. And at the time, I was so stressed, I did not want to talk to him about real estate, quote unquote, when we would go play badminton, right? And we had a common friend, and that kind of was like, hey, you guys should talk, so on and so forth. And at the time, my idea was flipping is fine in terms of making an income, but it's certainly not fine in terms of building wealth, because I was just running on a treadmill, one transaction after another, and I was like, I just can't take it anymore, right? And sometimes it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or vice versa, whatever you want to call it, right? And part of it was we both had a need, we just didn't know it yet.
Exactly.
So what was your situation at that particular time?
Means what we do now as a business was not my business idea when it started. It started as an investment opportunity. So I had some money on the side. I was looking into a lot of different businesses, but real estate investing or real estate properties was not the motivation to come to business. So my initial thought was, I got 2 kids. They're going to go to college in, let's say, that time, this is back in 2010, 2011. In 7 to 8 years, they're supposed to go to college, and I need to pay for their college. So my job is not giving me enough money to separate out that much. So I said, okay.
But hold on. You're a pretty cheap guy. Right? I mean, you're not, you're very astute with money, meaning you're not the type of person who's going to, you live well within your means. Your wife is, I think, even tighter than you are, right? Meaning it's that cultural thing where you're like, hey, money is hard earned and we're not going to waste it, right? And so whatever your savings were, you guys were trying to pay off your house early. You're trying to save every which way, every penny, every which way. And that a lot of people are like that. And actually and I know today the trend is, oh no, go leverage everything, go. I think it's stupidity. I genuinely believe it's stupidity that if you have that ability to be able to save, right, that is a tremendous benefit.
Right. I think that was the big base which I never realized. Because of that, I could do what I could do in last 10 years.
Right.
But that base was just the culture which I came from, or I came from very small a family which never had any extra money. So we are always thinking wise how you can save money or how you can keep money aside. So the whole point of coming to real estate was that, like, I have just enough money. Why don't I buy few properties, and then eventually in 7 8 years it will I can pay those off, or I can sell those to get money for the college. So that's how the initial thinking was. I never thought this will convert into such a huge business, but that's what I when I came to you, my initial thinking was, okay, I have $100,000. Can we invest in something? And you're looking for a partner at that time. So I think it was, you can say it was a destiny for both of us, where you're looking for somebody to put some money, and I was looking for somebody, okay, take this money and
Do some
do something with it.
So here was the challenge, right? I knew how to find properties. That was not an issue. I knew how to get them rehabbed. That was not an issue. I knew how the financing worked. But a lot of times, and this is for a lot of entrepreneurs, what I didn't have at the time was, at that particular time point in history, financing was hard.
Yeah.
Meaning you could not go just buy a rental property and do a DSCR loan like today, right? You don't need taxes. You don't need income to show income on it. As long as the property cash flows, boom, you can get a loan. That didn't exist at the time. You needed a W-2. In fact, if somebody made $50,000, they would give them a loan, and they wouldn't me making $200,000-$300,000. That's just kind of how the market was. And I needed somebody that was willing to put up some of their money, so that I didn't have to take out money from the flips. This flips is how I made a living, right? And kind of that's where Rahul entered the picture. And it was interesting because at the time, which we haven't mentioned, you were going to wrap up everything.
Yeah.
In fact, your wife, you had already shipped her back to India. You guys were going back, right? Because your plan was that, hey, in the United States, we can't really find a business or something, because both of you had the itch to do something more.
Right.
And you couldn't find it. And you guys were on your way back to India.
Yeah, so like she was already, like, I met you in 2010, and she left just before the school starts in India, which is like June of 2010. So my plan was, because we tried 10 different things from 2000 to 2010, and nothing worked. Like, none of the businesses worked. Job was okay, but I was not happy with the situation that I cannot get out of the job and do something different where I can control what I'm doing. So we know that we could do business in India. That was because we've done that before. We have support structure there. We have enough people, enough resources back there. So plan was, okay, let her go back with the kids. They are young enough so they can sustain, or they can go back the system, because it's a completely different education system there. But they're young enough that time that they can adjust and get into the high schools later. So she left, and my plan was to wrap everything up and then go back and join her to start a business back in India. So that's where I was meeting you. But my plan was to keep whatever money I have here. I didn't want to take back to India, because I knew they were going to come back here for the education.
For the education. Right.
So that money I wanted to invest somewhere, and that was my need when I met you.
And so it was interesting because I wanted to own a few rental properties. I had figured out flipping wasn't going to make me wealthy, make me some income, but it was not going to make me wealthy. And wealth came from owning rental properties. And so the whole idea was that, hey man, maybe we can own 2 or 3 properties, 5 properties together. And it literally started with a simple goal, which was, he said, man, I have 2 kids. I'm going to, if I can have a couple of properties that I can pay down or pay off in the next 5, 8 years, 10 years, then I can use those. I'm going to sell those. And then I use those dollars to be able to send my kids to college, right? I mean, makes perfect sense. And I'm like, okay, well, that'll be 2 properties. So we're going to buy 5 properties in about a 2-year span. And the goal was, in the next 7, 8 years, would pay them off.
Yeah.
And then we would sell 1, he would get 2, I would get 2, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so we're like, okay, let's buy kind of 2 properties. And I'm like, just in case we can't buy them, rehab them, refinance them. So at the time, the concept of BRRRR, which is buy, rehab, rent, and repeat, right? Refinance and repeat. That was not there. I'd never even heard of that concept. So we came up as a course of it with this idea of 257, which is back here, which we call 257 Cashflow for Life, which is 2 years, 5 houses, get them all paid off in 7. And this was not like, oh, today it just makes sense. Oh, 2 years, 5 properties, get them paid off in 7. At the time, it came about because it was just organic concept as we are kind of talking about, hey, we're both scared. The market is really, really bad. And I'm like, man, I think, and I'm selling him kind of this pipe dream. I'm like, Rahul, one thing, you're never going to lose money. I don't know how much you're going to make, but one thing is for sure, we're buying them really, really under market, and I know we can flip them for sure.
No,
that's for sure.
Because the whole point was, imagine this was back in 2011. So we just came out of that subprime loan fiasco of 2008. Everybody was coming out of real estate. None of the banks were giving loan to anybody. And here we are trying to say, okay, maybe this makes sense. Like every number you check, and by my nature, I'm just a number guy. I want to put so many Excel sheets to prove my point or prove the point wrong, saying, okay, this is not the right thing because I don't want to get into real estate that time as an investment. So I'm trying to prove myself this is not good. But every calculation I did coming out to be a positive cash flow. So it was difficult to accept, and I was never in real estate before where people don't have basis to their dreams. They just dream. Like you go to the real estate seminar, people are just giving out stuff out like crazy without any basis. As an engineer, I want like data. I want, okay, prove me this first, and then you can start talking. And here people talk first and then prove. Sometimes they prove. Sometimes they prove.
It doesn't matter, right? They'll just throw big numbers.
So it was difficult for me to come into this whole thing.
And it was, for me, I always felt that I didn't want to have somebody that came in as a partner, as somebody where I did the deal with, that I didn't want to be a failure, right? That was a big thing. Maybe it's a familial thing or whatever, but I was like, it's just failure is not in my book, right? And so more than anybody else, I didn't want to look bad to myself because that was extremely depressing for me. But yet that was literally the initial concept. And the first 2 properties we bought were small, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, small little townhouse condo type of properties. And do you remember what the purchase price was for both of them combined?
Was $35,000 each.
$35,000 each. And this is suburbs of Chicago, just B kind of suburb, blah suburbs.
Decent demographic, decent location.
Suburbs of Chicago. And literally, if you drove a newer car, the car cost more than the small little condos. And it was kind of scary because that was just the time. I mean, it was just... there were hundreds and hundreds of properties sitting on the market, but you're like, the last time this property sold, when was the last time this property sold for $30,000? It was never. Even not when the property was built.
Right.
It sold for $60,000 or $70,000, and we would go look back in 83, in 81 when this property sold, because we're like, this is just a weird time in history. And what is kind of funny is the first 2 properties at the time, which today you laugh about, some of the properties that we bought at that time, right? One of them we just sold. What was that bought for?
That was bought for like $60,000 that time.
$60,000.
Right.
And this is one of them, right?
One of them.
And it just sold. And what was the sale price on it? $220, right? So we bought it for $60,000. We rehabbed it for $20,000 or something like that. And when it appraised out, it was $150,000 or whatever it was at that time.
Right.
And so all of the money we invested came out. So you virtually have zero out-of-pocket expense in that particular property. Then the property's rented for the next 10, 12 years. And finally, it kind of came to a price where we end up selling it. And literally, that was the initial idea. And the initial idea was that we're not going to take the cash flow personally. I'm not going to take it. Rahul's not going to take it. And we're going to keep basically putting the cash flow back. And we're so scared that we're like, man, we're not going to touch it. And we're going to take the money and we're going to pay down every single property, right? Because we're like, what if the market collapses more?
Exactly.
What if, how are we going to pay the loans, right? And even though we were that scared, but then we were that cautious, right? And that was literally the foundation of kind of what started building. From there to today, we have 150, 160 properties together that we own. You have a bunch more properties that you own on top of that. I own a bunch more properties. So if you look at kind of the profile today, you're like, oh my God, how do you get to 2, 3, 400 properties? As it's humble beginnings. But if you go back today, as we record this, we're literally end of 2024. The beginning was 2011.
February 11th,
right?
First property.
February 11th, first property in 2011. So it's been almost 14 years since the time that this started. And a lot of times people will look back and say, oh, I wish I had started at that point. See, at the time, it was easy to find properties, but financing was incredibly tough. Yet today, when we look at it, so before we come to today, right? Over time, right? The first year we had maybe 4 or 5 properties, right? And year 2, maybe we got up to 10 or 12, something like that. But each property was a big deal. And these were small properties we were buying. Yet when you look at today, like people in Mastery that come, they're able to buy 20 properties year 1, right? They're able to buy 15, 20 deals just like that. Were we not smart, or what was the problem at the time?
It's just about financing. Like real estate for me is how you handle your cash or how you handle everybody else's cash too. So when we started, like Mastery happened in 2015 or 2014 actually. So that's when the group started building, the resources started building. You got a lot of private lenders came into picture. The financing terms kind of changed, like you just mentioned that DSCR loan. So with DSCR loan, you keep your credit. They are not checking your credits. Back then in 2011, 2012, because everybody got so much scared of that subprime loan, every bank was very, like the risk to the nth degree. Like they're taking my application used to be so large, like so many documents they used to ask for. First thing, they were not giving any investment loans, only few banks. So I know Andrew went to like 30, 40 banks before we found one guy who actually was ready to give us the loan on these investment properties. There was no residential loans on the investment properties that time. So money was tight. At the same time, because the market was still coming out of that recession, the back-end values were not there. So your spreads were not big enough to buy the property, do the rehab, and then you can do the BRRRR strategy where all the money comes out of it. It was so difficult. So every $1,000 was difficult. And obviously we didn't have much money, and then a lot of the lenders didn't know us. So today, if I go and ask for money, nobody will say no to me. That time, there was not many people who, because we were not proven our
and the lending space was very different. There was just no secondary market,
exactly.
right? And I mean, literally, we would go to the auction, and it's like we can bid 60. So if it will go to 61, we're like, oh my God, where are we going to get the $1,000?
Right.
62, we're out. And we would laugh at other people. They're paying 62, 64, 65. I'm not sure if we're laughing or they're laughing, but literally, those same properties today are worth 300,000, right? It's just kind of the market, but yet investments done now, if I look back, right? Like, oh my God, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of properties we passed up. Maybe we should have bought, right? But you have these, looking back, it's very easy to say, oh, we should have done X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But when you're in the moment, it is incredibly tough because you just don't have the resources and you don't know where to turn, right? So now looking back for the last about 14 years, if I ask you, okay, what are the successes and then what are some of the mistakes? So let's start with the mistakes first. In terms of maybe not buying enough properties, in terms of people, in terms of some of the personnel we hired, what are the lessons learned?
Like all of the above. But I guess the most thing is not having the right people around you. So we were not getting the right people who can actually execute the job, and we had enough properties coming in, but the thing was we are not able to convert it and get to the next one fast enough, or we didn't know that we try to do it ourselves. And I think that was the one thing for a business. I think I didn't came from a big business background, you didn't came from business background, so I think when we started hiring more and more people who are actually qualified and who are specialists in this thing, the things started moving along very well. Initially, I think that's one of the biggest hurdles or biggest problem we had to grow from the level where we started.
I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs go through that, and most people go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Where you hire people that are right in front of your face because you're trying to give away your problem to somebody else, right? And I think one of the mistakes that I've made a couple of different times in terms of investing is I have basically picked people that are in front because you trust them. Oh my God, they can never do you wrong, right? And they have no qualifications at the end of the day. But quote unquote, oh, they're nice people. They're good guys, right? And they may not be performing, but it's like you want to basically take your head and stick it in the sand. And why? Because you don't truly understand the function of somebody that you got. Somebody once said that hire slowly and fire quickly.
Yeah.
And truly, there is a lot of wisdom to that. And that was one of the big mistakes that I feel that we made. And this is something that's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to everybody, right? We all go through this because this is just how we grow. But that was one of the mistakes. What about, like, at times, a lot of people that we have seen over the years, they were willing to take a lot bigger risks than we were willing to take. Right?
I think that I look at as a success for us.
Okay.
Because the keeping the discipline on what you do, or what we did on these real estate transactions, the BRRRR strategy, to be honest, this is boring. Like, after a certain time, it becomes so boring that people get away from that and they start doing something different. We did that also. So I think, well, last 14 years, 15 years, one thing we have done is finding the properties which make sense for the rental market, for whatever the BRRRR strategy, and keep buying one after other. And we haven't changed that model.
Yeah,
I think that worked in our favor for sure.
But back in, like, say, before there was that burst in 2015, 16, 17, right? And then again, when Corona happened, right? At least in Corona, we were not highly leveraged, right? That the leverage was pretty low compared to what most people would have done, right? Now looking back, because obviously nobody could have predicted where the prices have gone.
Right.
I mean, nobody could have predicted that, right? And how high the market has gone and how crazy it has gotten. Do you feel, because today we still own, I mean, obviously 99.9% of the properties we bought, we have never sold them.
Right.
Right. We still own them. Do you feel sometimes bad that maybe during Corona we should have just liquidated a lot of that stuff, meaning gone out, put huge leverage on it, taken the money out and bought more properties? Do you feel bad about that sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, like, in that's the one problem we had. Like, I came to you about that thing. When the market went down, when interest rates were very down, like 3%, 4%, that was an opportunity where we could have taken a lot of money. But at the same time, like, we were every time, at least in this business, this side of the business, we are doing all the things very calculative way. You're not like you said, not taking the bigger risk, not going to the something which looks shiny and then start doing that. That one opportunity we lost for sure. We did some, which you don't know maybe, but we did. We did took some money out, and that's how the Florida started working.
Right.
So all the investment we started in the Florida, which is a different strategy, which is we call as a build to rent.
Sure.
That strategy, a lot of that funding came from the properties from here. But yes, we could have done 10 times more than that. What we did on that in those years.
Right. So, I mean, and that's where sometimes you look back, right? But the reason why I wanted to do this particular recording is a lot of times people will look back and say, well, Andrew, did it really work out for you, right? Partnering on that many properties, like first 130, 140 flips, I partnered with everybody. Number one, I didn't know any different. Number two, I wouldn't have started. The original partner I had was Fred, right? If it had not been for Fred believing in me, it's not that I didn't have the skill set. I had the skill set. Fred didn't put in a day's work, but Fred was somebody I respected because he ran another business. And I was like, well, if Fred thinks my idea when everybody else in 2008 is running for the hills. If he thinks that my idea has some merit, then maybe it does have some merit.
Right.
And it's a lot of times what you have to think about is we all need a crutch, right? Like for a little kid, you need somebody to hold their hands. They're going to fall. You're going to pick them up again. And then pretty soon you can let go of one hand. And now they're excited about, walking, running. And it's kind of business and life is like that a lot of times people think, well, I'm going to do it alone. I'm going to be the maverick. I'm going to be the entrepreneur. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to crash and burn, right? You're going to crash and burn. A lot of this is you leverage other people's intellect. You leverage other people's, maybe the confidence they have, maybe the intellectual capital that they have, not just money, not just credit. And that was a start. And Rahul coming along and saying, yeah, I think I can come in, fill in the pieces. And part of it was he went back to India for a year or so. I literally ended up buying properties. I was signing Rahul's name with his POA for year and a half. But even though he left with 10, 12 properties, when he came back, there were maybe 24. And from India, he's saying, hey, man, what about this property? What about this property? What about this property? Right? And I'm buying the property. So he knew which properties I bought, but he had no clue if they were rehabbed or not. They were rehabbed. I just hadn't deposited any of the checks.
Yeah.
Right? The checks would come in from the rentals and I would just stick it in the drawer. Right? I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but that's exactly what I did because I was excited about buying more properties. What that means is that I was a poor manager of doing that, and you need somebody else. So when he came, I'm like, hey, man, there's a bunch of checks over there. He's like, do you know which ones came in? I was like, I have no idea. I'm like, I really have no idea. You take care of those headaches.
Yeah.
Right? And can you talk about that? Because a lot of times people will look at it as, well, what is the skill set?
Yeah.
Why did you need Andrew or why did I need you?
Yeah, see, like every partnership, if it complements each other, then only it's going to grow. And that's what happened in our case, where he was on a side where he can find properties. He knows how to do that, exactly the numbers and everything. I started learning those, but initially I had no clue. So I wanted somebody to tell me, okay, this is a good property you should do. So that I had no knowledge about it. On the other side, some people are good at management, which I was, like managing the properties. I started managing all the rentals, taking all the checks, talking to the tenants. I almost managed 25 properties. And then after that, it started becoming a job. And then we started hiring people. But initially, you need somebody who you can rely on for the part which you are not sure about. And if you don't complement each other, the partnerships don't work. So if you're looking for a partner, you need to look for somebody who you don't like, something which you're not. If you're the same as the other person, you're going to clash, and it's not going to go anywhere.
And this happens a lot. You go to a real estate seminar, you go to a meeting, two brand new people, and both of them are completely broke. Both of them have no clue. Or the only thing that common they have is excitement. Oh my God, we're excited. You're broke, I'm broke, and let's get in together. I mean, it's like, think about this, right? You're basically on a boat and it's sinking, right? Don't go find another person that is scared of water and can't swim. At that point, you want to look for somebody like Michael Phelps, a person who's a really, really, really good swimmer, right? Why? Because that's the only person that can save you and can help you, because otherwise both people are going to sink. And we see this all the time, that people will come and then they're like, oh my God, I just met my best friend. Like, okay, great. Well, what does your best friend do? Oh my God, they're brand new like me. Right? Okay, they have any money? No. They have any credit? No. Do you have any money? No. Do you have any credit? No. Well, then do you both have a brain? No. Well, then, and you need to have complementary skill sets. If you have time and they lack time, if you don't have as much money, they have money and you're willing to do the work. But you got to bring complementary values so that they can fill in. And maybe you have part of things. Maybe you have a little bit of money. Maybe they have a little bit of money. Maybe you don't have the best credit. Maybe they have a better financial statement, so that you can complement those values. And at some point in a partnership, I'm telling you this, there is no 50-50, right?
Yeah.
I haven't figured that out about a marriage, hence for divorce. But in a partnership, as it comes to business, there is no 50-50. right? And what I mean by that is this, that if you want to be the entrepreneur, you want to grow, you're going to have to do more work, period. That's just how it is. One partner is always at times going to do more work. Maybe other times the other person is going to take over, then the other person is going to do more work. That is just how it is. If you're the type of person that's going to count how much I do exactly and how much you do, believe me, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? So having said that, the work side of it, there's another side of it, which is personality types, right? And I'm going to say it, Rahul won't, I'm going to say it, right? Sometimes people like me, meaning quote unquote people who have big dreams, ideas, entrepreneur types, they're a little wacky, right? And I mean this 100%, that if you're, because it comes with the territory, right? That you're not going to be rational at times. You're going to maybe have a short fuse, and you're going to take it out to the people that you owe the most to. And that other person has to be able to put up with it. And that other person has to be the more mature person in that relationship, right? You want to talk about that?
So it's like, I'm kind of a big picture guy. So like, I'm looking at, okay, we are heading there, and then in between things are going to go wrong. Things are going to be, people are going to get frustrated, especially with if you get a type of people like Andrew, who's like all the time finding new ideas, getting frustrated all the time, but they have a vision. So you need somebody who has a vision, somebody who can actually see the goal, and then you need to be there to have that picture complete. So that big picture guy kind of thing. So for me, I knew that inherently, a lot of times whenever he says something that he's not meaning that, it meant that. So, from his actions, you can always see at the end of the day, okay, we are heading to a right direction, but in between things are going to happen. And that's what, like, fortunately for both of us, we came into this partnership organically. So we didn't find each other for the partnership. It just happened and it worked. And that's why we are here. For somebody who doesn't have that, they will have to find that. And you need to find the complementing features. Like, you need to understand yourself first. And now you have to find this other person who can help you. But without partnership, without teams, you cannot grow. You can go up to a certain level, but after that, it's just not going to happen. So,
and what's important to understand is that it wasn't about the money, right? It was
about
a
money,
picture, right? It was about a bigger picture. And obviously, everybody's trying to get rich, right? I mean, everybody wants to build wealth. But it was never about every time looking at a dollar, meaning, oh my God, we just made this money, let's take it out, right? One thing that has always been the thing is that, hey, we're doing this for the long run. We're doing this for the long run, and we're going to have to make a sacrifice today to have something tomorrow that most people won't have, right? And having said that, that it is possible. Maybe there's another Andrew somewhere, maybe there's another Rahul somewhere, and maybe they could have, instead of 30, 40, 50 million, maybe they could have ended up with 100 or 200 million. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Right? And you don't. But then you have to figure out that, hey, could I have done this alone? 100% categorically no, right? 100% no. Now looking back, both of us probably are like, well, maybe we should have made certain decisions, hiring certain people, trusting certain people, right? But it certainly was not done to harm Rahul, or his decision wasn't to harm me. It was done that, hey, guess what, man? You were stupid. I was stupid equally,
right,
because I participated in that decision. And I think that goes back to taking ownership of those decisions. And with partnerships, it's not going to be perfect. But one thing I can certainly say, in the last 14 years, have we 100% agreed on everything?
Never.
Never. But we've 100% agreed on the goal.
Yes, exactly.
Right? 100% agreed on the goal. And at times, but on the whole, 99.9% times we've agreed on most things, because guess what? The goal has been exactly the same. And one thing I never had to at least question or worry about is what happens to the money, right? That was one thing I always had blind trust, that Rahul's going to do the right thing, because he happens to be, and I've always said this, if you're an entrepreneur, do not find another entrepreneur to do business with, right? That's one decision I made. Probably that's the best decision I made. I've always said that you should be the most exciting person in that relationship. The other person should be a person who drives a Honda, Toyota, a Hyundai. They should never aspire to drive a Ferrari. If they do not partner with them. And I mean, because it's a personality type, right? You want people that are boring to do business with. Boring people are predictable people. They don't make short-term decisions. They make long-term decisions. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, boring, being boring, I think I'm here, I'm fine with that. So,
Right.
but no, it's not like boring. Basically, it's the nature of a person. It goes down to, okay, who's going to take lead on the things which every business to grow, there has to be new visions, new ideas, but there has to be a practical point of it. Okay, can we actually do this thing? Or can we actually make the idea happen and make a business out of it? For that, you need different people. You cannot be just same person doing that, because it will never go anywhere. So for us, means we had a lot of setbacks, but at the end of the day, I would say after 13, 14 years where we sit, I think it's going great. So whatever we have done, now looking back, like you said, there are a lot of things which would have done differently. But anyway, at the end of the day, the big picture is still true. What we
So
started looking
I
at.
guess I'll just end it with this, right? I don't know, it was 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
We're in the airplane, and it's like for all of us. Maybe I came from you could say, an upper middle class family, right? In terms of, because it just happens to be both of my parents chose a profession that paid a little bit higher, right? But yet, when you look at the quote unquote family background, I think both of us came from pretty middle class, if not lower middle class families, if you go back just one generation. And my question to Rahul was, I'm like, man, you realize if you didn't do a damn thing, like, number one was, your dad would be proud to see that you own an airplane today, right? I know this was never Rahul's dream. That was more my thing. But I'm like, how far we have come. And I say we because it was not possible for one person to do it. At least for me, I did not have the ability. And I can say that with 100% confidence, right? And the second thing, what I pointed out, I'm like, you realize, even if you don't do a damn thing today at that time, right? That your kids are going to end up with an empire of 15 or 20 million bucks, right? And they don't have to. And as an engineer, right, you may be pretty smart, but do you think even if you had progressed to a VP, that you could have ever gotten to that type of net worth?
No, see, the main thing is real estate is you never see that money coming in, and you don't realize like how much net wealth or how much money it can separate out from the normal thing. The job won't do that. Like how much money you can get, it's always okay. You start at some 100,000, 200,000. It's a percentage increase on that 200,000. It will be never going to be 200 times 200, which real estate is a completely different ball game. So like I want to end with one thought is, I started this thing in my age of 39, and nobody was telling me to do this thing before. The education part, like we keep sending people to the education, spend like 200, 500, $1 million on that. It does not give back the way the real estate can give. If people are doing, and this is my challenge to everyone, like if people are doing 2 degrees, they're doing like 2 majors, do a major in a real estate. 1 major in your whatever you like, 2nd major where you can do this passive income strategy as a minor or whatever. But if you get that early on, and if you start at early age, you can be practically retired by 30, 35. What it takes like 10, 15 properties. That's about it. For a normal living, I'm not saying you're buying jets or anything, but for normal comparison with any other job in the world, I would say 10, 20 properties and you're all set. So people should think real estate as a different profession, or should start looking for a different angle, which we never looked at or nobody told us. And I think Mastery now gives that perspective to people, and that's why people are growing faster.
No, I mean, it's amazing, right? Rahul was 39 at the time when he started buying rental properties in a portfolio. I, at the time, was basically 4 years younger.
Yeah.
And so I was like, 35, 36 years old when I first bought my first rental property, right? I mean, can you imagine if we had started when we're 20 years old, today we have people in Mastery that are 20 and that have 3, 4, 5 properties with the Manand.
Yeah, it's
24 years old and he has 24 properties, right? At 24 years old. And it's amazing and it's information, right?
Yeah.
Today, and this is just, I can't believe I'm saying this, that literally for us to get to the first million, 2, 3, 4, 10 million, it took till our 40s, 45. And yet today, with the amount of information that is available, right? Now the next generation is going to be like, hey man, you guys were poor. Literally, I mean, they're going to be looking at 100 million, 200 million, because that is possible. And the foundation that has been laid for them, it's like, hey man, there's something wrong if you don't get to 500 million, because it is the speed at which money can be made today. It has never been faster than ever before, right? And it's just, and you don't have to do big things. You do not have to buy big properties. And this is my open challenge to anybody, that I can show you 100%. You take 100 people, 95 of them, if they follow direction, 5 people, 10 people are not going to do anything, that they're just damn lazy, right? But then the rest of them can get to that figure of 5 or 10 million in a period of 10, 12 years. If you just stick to small properties, if you go to bigger properties, the percentage goes down. Why? Because it's just not possible for most people. So having said that, this has not only been an honor for me to do the podcast, but genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Rahul, because I certainly would not be here had it not been for him to say, hey, I'm going to go along for the adventure, whether he knew it or not.
Yeah. And thanks on my side too, because I never dreamt of I'll be here 10 years back. So it's we got into this thing for a reason, and I believe in that. People can come across and they get in your life for a reason, and I think for me it was you. So appreciate and thank you.
So guys, having said that, you're listening to Cashflow for Life, and we've said this many, many times. If you take care of real estate for the first 5 years, real estate will take care of you for the rest of your life. So either you pay now or you pay later. But life is going to extract a price out of you. The question is, when do you choose to pay? Having said that, thanks a bunch. Please share, like, and please let us know if you have any other guests who you would love to have us on, because we always want to have bright minds to come and share great ideas so we can all learn and keep growing. Talk to you soon.